Marjorie Taylor Greene says she'll resign from Congress after an online brawl with Donald Trump. But is she really through with politics? And what does her split with the president say about the cracks forming in the Trump political coalition? Plus, who's winning the gerrymander wars as the race for control of the House heats up?
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome to Potomac Watch, the daily podcast of Wall Street Journal Opinion. I'm Paul As You Go, and I'm here with Kyle Peterson and Alicia Finley. So Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, once a Donald Trump favorite, who then became embroiled in a big fight with Donald Trump because she criticized some of his decisions, the opposition at first to releasing the Epstein files, the bombing in Iran, also a lot of foreign trips she opposed. Donald Trump turned on her, and instead of referring to her as Marjorie Taylor Greene, called her Marjorie Taylor Brown because, well, who the hell knows why the president said that, but in any case, she's going to resign from Congress in early January, she says. Let's listen to a portion of her explanation in her rather lengthy resignation video that she posted last week.
If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class that can never, ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well.
Kyle, is that a manifesto of someone who looks to be leaving politics, or maybe just leaving the House and thinking about where she might run next? Could be statewide or maybe even bigger.
It could be, and I don't know what Marjorie Taylor Greene has in mind for her future, but I do think that it is not the end. This resignation is not the end of this style of politics. I think that we can be sure of. And you can hear in that clip that was just played, kind of what I would describe as internet meme style of politics. And unfortunately, to my view, it has taken over some of what is now happening in Congress, this push for this vote on releasing the Epstein files. Now there's going to be a push to ban Congress from trading stocks, as if Congress is just full of corrupt day traders who are getting there to get rich. And that's why the country is in such trouble. I think a lot of this is distractions from what's really going on, but also elements of kind of a paleo conservative kind of stay home America foreign policy thrown in there. I mean, it does suggest a lack of cohesiveness in what has been flying under the Republican Party flag in a way that is a potential problem here in the years to come.
I really do see that. I mean, if you look at, Alicia, you think about her paragraph there in which she names all kinds of, a caricature of enemies. I mean, neocons, we haven't heard from them in a long, long time. Big pharma. Does she hate anti-obesity drugs? Does she hate cures for cancer? I guess pharma is, it's a proxy for big business and elites and people, the vague, nefarious people who are making life terrible for average people, allegedly. But that's a pretty significant, not a dominant wing of the Republican Party now, but a significant one.
Well, I think that's right. And you actually hear the Vice President, J.D. Vance, often fan a lot of these theories by attacking big pharma, neocons, and such. Robert F. Kennedy definitely is a junior, the Health and Human Services Secretary, definitely is appealing to that crowd also. And I think one of the reasons why Bill Cassidy, the Louisiana senator who's a doctor and the head of the health committee in the Senate, has been very critical to criticize Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is he's afraid of getting on the wrong side of that base, even though he disagrees vehemently with much of what RFK Jr. is doing on vaccines and other issues. he realizes that there is a faction. It's not a dominant faction in the Republican Party, but it is a faction he doesn't want a primary challenge.
The problem for the president here is that Donald Trump, now again president for the second time, he has to govern. What does govern mean? Well, govern means you actually want to have policies that work. You want to have an economy that is firing on all cylinders to be able to raise the real incomes of Americans. You want government to be able to provide services. Granted, it doesn't do that very well, but if the services it does provide, it should be able to do it well. You want to have a foreign policy that doesn't threaten American interests, that doesn't court adversaries to attack us, that protects the homeland and our interests abroad. All of that requires a kind of reality-based thinking, Kyle. And it doesn't, you can't get, I mean, you can attack elites and this or that, but ultimately you actually have to make decisions. And let me give you an example. The H-1B visa fight. The president said, I actually think we need foreign workers. Why do we need them? Because we don't have enough. And let me give you a case of the plant in Georgia, okay, which he did, the one where the ICE went in and deported something like 500 South Koreans. And the president said, well, why'd we do that? Hyundai is building a plant there to provide workers for Americans. They need people from South Korea who have expertise in those assembly lines, and they're going to train Americans. And yet his base, Trump's base, says, well, you can't do that. I mean, they're taking away American jobs. Well, Trump fired back, well, actually, no. So there's just this disconnect between the reality of governing and the kind of populist faction that throws grenades all the time.
Some of his foreign policy decisions provide another good example, I think. I mean, it is easy to be on the outside as a party out of office saying, we're sick of all these people starting wars, and we're sick of these big defense companies helping us get into these wars. And then it's another thing to be in the Oval Office in the Situation Room and to have the opportunity, after Israel had done a lot of the hard work taking down Iranian defenses, to strike a real blow to Iran's nuclear program, which is what Donald Trump did. And you could see some of the heads exploding on the America First side of the aisle, saying this is not what we thought we were getting in Donald Trump. And I mean, Trump himself has always been a little bit more ideologically and pragmatically flexible on some of these things than some of his allies have wanted to assume, given his rhetoric. And also, he just has a special connection to his base in a way that allows him to not get crosswise with him. The person who is going to have a bigger challenge here, I think, is going to be J.D. Vance, because he has thrown his lot in so far, I think, with this kind of populist faction on the right. But once Trump leaves the scene, that is when there's going to be a real battle joined about the future of the Republican Party.
I think so much of this, Alicia, is about 2028. We're beginning to see the cracks in the MAGA coalition. We're beginning to see individual ambitions exert themselves, different groups that want to capture J.D. Vance or capture the nominee, whoever it is, in 2028. And you're also seeing, I think, beginnings of a pushback against some of the excesses of the Trump base. And I would point to Ted Cruz's criticism of Tucker Carlson for essentially showcasing anti-Semites on his program, and some of the anti-free market positions that and isolationist positions that are taken up now by factions of the Republican Party.
Well, I think that's right. I think Ted Cruz is trying to kind of chart more of a free market, a traditional Republican course, because he may see the other aisle, or the large lane inhabited by J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and others who are much more populist, and he sees there's a big lane aisle still in the traditional Republican wing. You recall that he also criticized Brendan Carr for threatening local broadcasters, saying that this isn't what Republicans stand for. We're supposed to stand up for free speech and the First Amendment, and what the FCC and Brendan Carr and Trump were doing is the opposite. He's also on tariffs been critical of, couched his criticism, but nonetheless has been somewhat critical of the administration's tariffs and their effects on businesses and Texans. So I think you are starting to see more fissures, more Republicans at least tiptoe and start to push back against the JD Vance crowd, because they realize, this Trump MAGA wing isn't completely cohesive, to Kyle's point, and there are openings and opportunities for a free market wing to rise again.
Yeah, you can't run for 2028 as anti-MAGA. Trump and Cruz won't plan to do that. You can't run as any kind of never Trumper, or run to restore the kind of Republican Party of the George W. Bush era. But there are significant differences that you can exploit, I think, on foreign policy, and on the market economy. And I think that's what Cruz is going to start to do. So these differences are worth following, as both political parties in 2028 are going to have to sort out just what they stand for in their choice of nominee and the choice of an agenda. It's going to be a big election for deciding what the parties stand for. All right, let's turn to the gerrymander wars, which get to the 2026 election, not 2028. Texas, an appellate court recently overturned or put an injunction on the new Texas map that was supposed to add 5 seats to the Republican column for 2026. The Texas appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has now put a stay on that injunction pending briefs being filed and perhaps a more elaborate decision. Let's listen to Governor Greg Abbott of Texas talk about Judge Jeffrey Brown, a Trump appointee, by the way, who with another judge issued the injunction on the Texas map.
Judge Brown, who wrote that opinion, he was just reversed last year in a different redistricting decision. He was wrong last year. He's wrong this year. The senior judge you were pointing out, Jerry Smith, he was the only person on that panel from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. He was exactly right. He's never seen, and I have never seen, a judgment, an opinion so erroneous in its writing. And it looked like Judge Brown geared his writing to try to achieve a result. And that's something that the United States Supreme Court, I think, is just not going to tolerate.
The 2-1 decision, in that case, the Judge Smith was in opposition. In the redistricting cases like this, Alicia, they're a little different, right? They go to a special appellate court that can include district court judges, which is what Judge Brown was, not necessarily the full appellate panel of the Fifth Circuit. And then they go directly to the Supreme Court. And that's where they are now. Justice Alito put a stay on this, no doubt with the support of all the justices, because they want to hear this appeal. What do you think they're going to do here, Alicia?
Well, that's right. It's an administrative stay, so they asked for the parties to file briefs by Monday, so they can consider whether to extend the stay. And I think you're going to likely get some divisions on the Supreme Court, but I think they will stay the lower court's decision, in part because it's a little convoluted. The reasoning, what essentially the Jeffrey Brown's decision says is that Texas violated the Equal Protections clause of the Constitution by using the Justice Department's argument that so-called coalition districts, these are districts in which minorities comprise, or two different minority groups comprise a majority. These coalition districts are actually violate the Constitution, and therefore by eliminating these constitutional or these coalition districts, the state was acting unconstitutionally. It's a little bit of a mind bender.
Yeah, I would say.
And so I think because of that, I think the Supreme Court will ultimately stay, but obviously it does put the political John Roberts in a tough decision, because obviously if he does, he sides with, I believe it will be a conservative majority on this and stays it. I think that the Supreme Court is going to be attacked for being in the tank for Trump, and you're going to get a very dyspeptic liberal dissent.
Well, probably true, but all of this is tied up in another ongoing Supreme Court case, which is not like this one is part of their emergency docket, but part of their regular docket. They heard an oral argument in the Louisiana challenge to the Louisiana congressional map, Kyle, in a month or so ago. And they're going to rule on this, we hope. And this involves whether or not the judiciary should be able to play a role in using race to challenge what are political or partisan maps drawn by partisan legislatures, using Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to do so. The court has, I think, is poised, in my view, to overturn its Gingles precedent on this. Gingles is the operative case. And if they do that, then this Texas map will all become part of that analysis, because the argument in the Judge Brown's opinion was based on race. So this all will flow through from that overriding Louisiana decision.
Right, and the timing is part of what makes it awkward, because the Supreme Court has not ruled yet on that Louisiana case. Just to add on what happened here, and my understanding of it is, when the Trump administration was trying to convince Texas to redistrict, it sent the state a letter pointing out these coalition districts where, you may have blacks and Hispanics together are a majority, but it's not a one minority majority district, and arguing that was unconstitutional. What the judge said in this case, the 2-1 majority, said that there's not evidence that when those districts were drawn in 2021, they were drawn with race in mind in that way. So those districts, the court says, are fine. Then when the Trump administration told Texas, basically, these districts are coalition districts and you need to undo them, the court's view is it was basically an order to Texas to redraw the districts with race in mind. And the problem in these cases, the vice that states have been in, is how and how much are they supposed to consider race? This is something that Justice Clarence Thomas has spent years talking about, is if they draw districts and they consider race too much, that's unconstitutional. If they don't consider it enough, then they get sued under the Voting Rights Act. And courts say, you only have one majority minority district and you really need two of them. And so that is what the Supreme Court is, I think, going to ultimately clear up in this Louisiana case. And the only thing that makes it a little bit tricky is that the Texas decision now is reaching the Supreme Court on the emergency docket while that Louisiana case is still pending.
Ultimately, this is about power, right? The gerrymander wars are about the Democrats and the Republicans in their different states with their varying majorities attempting to stack the district maps in a way that will help their political parties and get a majority in Congress. So let's do a couple of hypotheticals here, just in terms of the math on the redistricting wars. Let's assume that the Texas case is won by the Texas loses its challenge to the appellate court decision, and they don't get those 5 seats. Who will have won the redistricting wars? Does that mean a big win for Democrats after their California rewrite of that map?
I think so. And actually, the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia actually projects, even if the Texas map is upheld as is, based on all the current California, Missouri, Ohio, North Carolina, and Utah, the Democrats are still actually looking that they may come out ahead. So unless some other Republican states like Indiana jump into the game and also redraw their districts, I think Democrats are likely to come out ahead regardless.
And then contingency 2, let's say that the Supreme Court, overturns the Louisiana map and said that judges should, that Section 2 can no longer, of the Voting Rights Act, can no longer be used for racial gerrymanders. What happens then? The advantage swing back to Republicans?
So I think that the issue here is that you likely will see Republican challenges to some of the maps, particularly in the South, that were drawn to include, maybe an additional majority minority district that wasn't required. But under the Supreme Court's precedents, legal challenges or changes in election laws or maps close to an election, they usually put that on hold. And so I don't think you're going to see any impacts as a result of that in the next redistricting cycle. Maybe in 2028 you could.
Okay, I see. So it'll be put off for the 2026 election. Wouldn't help Republicans then, because I think Alabama, Louisiana, maybe Mississippi, maybe North Carolina, Georgia and Florida could redo some of their maps. But if that doesn't happen before 2026, then your point about the Democrats getting the advantage might hold here. Kyle, just to end this isn't what Donald Trump had in mind when he decided to start the gerrymander rewrites mid-decade, was it?
No, and that suggests why he's leaning so hard on Indiana and other states to try to follow down this path. It does suggest to me, particularly some of the comments in this judicial ruling about that letter from the Justice Department to Texas, talking about it being full of errors, even typographical errors. It does suggest that they didn't really game plan this out and strategize very well before they started this whole free-for-all of mid-decade redistricting. The other point that I think is worth making is just that the margins, one way or another on this stuff, generally, I think, get swamped by overall changes in how the electorate is feeling. I mean, I saw one analysis where there was a tree branch of like, if the Texas map gets upheld, if it doesn't, and it's like less than a percentage point in the overall vote, one way or another, all of this redistricting stuff. And if you talk about how the electorate's mood is going to be in November of 2026 if we don't get this economy going, if inflation doesn't come down from 3%, I mean, I think that the change in just the way that the parties are viewed by independents, voters in the middle, even fed up partisans on one side or the other is way bigger than 1%. And so to my mind, it makes more sense for Trump and Republicans to be thinking about, what can we do to prove to voters that we deserve another term?
Well, yeah. And the risk parties take with gerrymanders is that in order to create more safe districts for their parties, they also sometimes have to put a couple of more in play so that in a normal election year, those would go for your side, the Democrats in California, say, Republicans in Texas. But in even a modest wave election for the other side, suddenly you could end up losing more seats. So this could be one of those grand miscalculations by Donald Trump, or perhaps it could work. But right now, it is not looking like he had hoped to gain a number of seats. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you all for listening. We are here on Potomac Watch every day. Thanks for listening.